Cindy Hepfer, I would like to welcome you to the third in a series of ALCTS webinars on institutional repositories. ALCTS, the Association for Library Collections and Technical Services, a division of the American Library Association, is engaged in developing and providing outstanding programs and continuing education to the library profession. While we are waiting for a few more people to join us, and we have 57 attendees this afternoon, just a few housekeeping matters related to today's presentation. If you would like to ask the presenters a question, and we very much encourage you to do so, please do not use the raise your hand icon on your screen. Rather, use the question box to submit your questions in writing. We will be monitoring the questions throughout the program and will do our best to respond to all of them at the conclusion of the formal presentation. If we are unable to answer all the questions during the allotted time, we will provide the answers offline. The program is being recorded, and in a few days you will receive a message with a link to the audio file. Immediately upon the conclusion of the webinar, you should receive an evaluation survey. We hope you will take just a couple of minutes to respond. Your comments are very helpful as we plan future webinars, and we take all the comments seriously. Now, it looks like we're getting close to the number of attendees. We are up to 44, so I'm going to introduce our two speakers today. Our presenters this afternoon are Marisa Ramirez and Michael Miller from California Polytechnic University in San Luis Obispo, talking about generating campus buy-in for your IR. As the digital repository librarian, Marisa is primarily responsible for the development and implementation of Cal Poly's repository. This includes fostering collaboration with academic departments to bring heightened visibility to faculty scholarship. Marisa has considerable experience with digital repositories, having previously worked with the Arizona Memory Project and with digital projects at the University of North Carolina and at the Smithsonian Institution libraries. Her interests include digital preservation and curation, the role of technology in social networking, and the adoption and use cycles of new information technologies. Michael Miller is Dean of Library Services at Cal Poly. He is a strong advocate of the institutional repository and for the use of emerging technologies to showcase information. Since becoming Dean at Cal Poly in 2007, Mike has been engaged in focusing attention on greater collaboration among the academic disciplines and in positioning the library to support the institution's instructional and research efforts. And now I think we will begin. It is 2 o'clock and we have a very full program and we want to leave a little time for questions, so I'll turn the program over to Mike.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon. I'm Mike Miller from Cal Poly. With me is Marisa Ramirez, our digital repository librarian.
Hello, everyone.
Marisa and I are actually on two different coasts today. I'm in California, she's in Pittsburgh. So we're going to keep the mic open, but we'll take questions online. And then we'll try to answer some of your questions at the end of the program. Today our goals are to help you learn a little bit about our experience here marketing IR on our campus, and also to introduce you to some of the fundamentals of marketing. We also would like to leave you with some things you feel you can do on your home campus. We thought it might be appropriate to give you just a quick profile of Cal Poly. We're a member of the California State University system, and we're located on the Central Coast, about halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles. We're a master's level institution with about 19,000 students. Very traditional campus, mostly on-campus residents. We are Polytechnic curriculum, so heavy emphasis on the sciences, engineering, and agriculture. And we like to think we're the place that invented the approach to curriculum of learn by doing. It's a very important part of what we do. And because everyone has bragging rights, let me share just a couple of ours. For the past 16 years, U.S. News and World Report has ranked us #1 in the West for public master's institutions. Last year, Forbes magazine ranked Cal Poly #3, tied with UCLA, as top public college for getting rich. Now that's our students, not our staff. And the last one is Surfline ranked Cal Poly as #3 best surfer school in the U.S. So we'll take our accolades any place we can get them. We also thought it might be appropriate to give you a little timeline and some basic facts about our IR, which is called Digital Commons. The first two bullets represent what was really the first phase of our marketing from October 06 to February 07. This was really my responsibility because I needed to focus up in the organization and work with the president and provost. This part of the marketing had to be successful because we needed the funding to launch the project. The second phase then was really October 07 to 08, and that's the point at which we hired Marisa, and not only geared up with actual implementation of the project, but expanded our marketing efforts to include the whole campus. Marketing is something we consider that needs to be an ongoing effort. We decided, we decided very early in our planning process that we didn't really want to take our limited labor pool and use them on the technology itself. We wanted to use our people, Marisa in particular, to communicate directly with faculty, students, and administrative units. That's why we chose bPress, because it's a turnkey system. Their institutional repository is called Digital Commons, and another feature that we found desirable was that it has a second integrated product called Selected Works, which creates faculty profiles. And faculty profiles is something we heard repeatedly from our faculty as something that was important to them. Now the numbers at the bottom of the slide are really significant for us because it tells us we're succeeding, and it can be a selling point further down the road for us. So we're just a little over a year into the project. We have, I checked numbers this morning, about 130 profiles, faculty profiles up. That represents just under 4,000 papers and other kinds of items. And for the last 12 months, we just went over 58,000 downloads. That's a tremendous selling point with faculty and with the provost. I think it's probably important to acknowledge that you need a plan. And marketing is not a traditional library strength. There's many things we do well. That's one we tend to overlook. I'm of an age that when I came into libraries, the philosophy was, if you're doing a good job, people on campus will know it. From my experience, it's not true. You've got to get out there. And I think in this day and age, we have to be prepared to actually sell those things that we do. In times of diminishing resources, the library will actually be competing for resources inside the university. And as a way of casting your project, it's better if your project is perceived as a campus initiative, a presidential or provostial supported project managed by the library, rather than just a library project. So have a plan. Target all levels within the university. Don't let a lack of formal marketing training stop you. It can be an informal plan. One of the things, if you're lucky enough to be hiring someone for your IR, what you may want to do as part of the required criteria for the job, have marketing in there. Marisa came to us with 2 years experience from the Leo Burnett advertising agency, and we have taken great advantage of that. And I think as you go along, you have to continue to communicate with each other. It's not just a plan, it's a continually evolving plan. So you need to communicate tell the same story to the campus, share with each other what works. And then above all, be adaptable. As you learn the things that work in your pitch to the campus, share it and work together on that. For example, we initially thought we would communicate on a college-by-college basis to comprehensively add faculty. Well, we all know the adage about faculty being like cats, and so that didn't work too well. Their priorities were much broader than ours. And so we quickly adapted and identified early adapter type people on campus, the people who were willing to give it a try. We sought them out and we tried to make it as easy as possible for them to get their content into our IR. One of the things that I think is really important is to express to the campus the value that we provide, but it has to be done in terminology that resonates with them. So my job in marketing was to work up in the organization, and I therefore tried to tailor my message to the individual concerns of our president and provost. Our president at the time was very much focused on the Spellings Commission and the theme of accountability. But graduation rates and so forth are numbers. It's very dry data, and it's hard to communicate that kind of information with parents and the community. So as I described to him how an institutional repository might work, you could see he was getting it. At one point he said, I could use this to show parents our senior projects online and say, that's the caliber of work your son or daughter will be producing in 4 years if they come to Cal Poly. It convinced him totally. And we were also showing that we would be making his job easier. The provost was a little different. He's well aware of the need to brand the institution and to share research as broadly as possible. He was very interested in progressive improvement. Fortunately for us, he had actually seen an IR at another institution. And I actually am indebted to the librarian who did the demo there, because what happened was she did a demo showing a student paper from 3 years back. He's an engineer. He likes, online information, but he wasn't overly impressed by that. But the librarian did a very clever thing. She then showed a student paper from the previous year and then another one from the current year. And what became obvious was that with easy access to past student work, the quality of the papers were getting better each year. Again, the provost was sold on the value. Because he was also interested in progressive improvement for faculty, he realized an IR could be useful in showing good examples across campus among faculty, just as easily as sharing their output, intellectual output, with the rest of the world. Now, I didn't need to sell the deans in terms of getting funding, but I did need to convince them that this was something that was advantageous to them, because we were going to need their cooperation in reaching their faculty. Now, several of them were preparing for accreditation, and they saw the IR as a great way to organize papers and other information in advance of accreditation, to let the campus, their alumni, students know what their faculty were working on. And probably the bottom line was they saw it as one less project that they themselves were going to have to organize. I think as we went around campus and we talked to people, we also, especially before we were at the point where we had something to demo, we found there could be some confusion. So just to share that with you, some people would confuse an IR with an e-portfolio, and we would need to talk about those differences. Some even confused it with promotion tenure software like digital measures. So we'd have to explain how digital measures tend to be administrative internal use, whereas an institutional repository is taking some of the same information but sharing it publicly from students to the world. And I have to admit that the last bullet is almost humorous, but it did come up. And it perhaps is a warning for us as we go out to market, that we have to be prepared for unexpected results. And that's the hardest thing to prepare for, but it's the kind of thing that if we can do it well, we can turn it to our advantage. Now what we'd like to do is just take a moment and share a poll question with you and get your responses on that. I'm going to put that up right now. So if you could take a look at the responses and give us your impressions of what would work on your campus, that would be very interesting. Polling has almost completed. I'm going to let it go just a little bit longer for the last people to weigh in on this. Okay, let's share the results with everyone. There we go. And you can see most people feel they're going to be most challenged by getting the attention of faculty. I'm glad to see that most people feel that they're going to be able to reach their president, reach their provost, and make the case there. Faculty is tough, but again, our approach was to work with the people who want to work with you. If that's successful, if they feel good about it, then they share that information with their colleagues. Marisa's going to have some more ideas on how to do this as we go along. So why don't we take the results off the screen. And Marisa, I'm now going to turn the next part over to you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So like Mike mentioned, we did encounter several of the challenges that you saw in the poll, and capturing faculty attention, I'm going to be sharing with you how we've been able to overcome that challenge. There are some marketing techniques I'd like to share which we've successfully employed. And the first thing that I'd like to share is defining your target audience. This is a marketing term, but basically what it intends to do is figuring out and identifying who will be most interested and receptive to your message about the institutional repository. Now, this might be groups of people, or it might be specific individuals, faculty members. You need to think about what works for your campus. Think about the characteristics of this target audience or audiences. And if you're having a difficult time defining a target audience, maybe it just seems like, well, everyone's our target audience. You might have better success by thinking about key pain points or problems that the IR can address. So just to kind of reiterate that, I have a finger with a Band-Aid. You need to think about the pain points that the IR can solve. And I have an example of this here on our campus. I'm part of Special Collections, and Special Collections has a great working relationship with the Facilities Planning Department. This department has master planning documents they kept depositing within the bricks and mortar archives, and they talked to us about, hey, we're having problems managing the digital instance of these master planning documents. We'd like to share them online, but they're enormous in file size, and we have concerns about ADA compliance, American Disabilities Act compliance. So word got out to me, and I thought, you know what, we can address those concerns. The IR can address those pain points, and we were able to develop a really great working relationship by answering those key pain points. In terms of target audience, from our experience and from the literature, we knew that our target audience would be interested in increasing the visibility and accessibility of their scholarship. They would want to increase collaboration and sharing of complementary research, but they wouldn't want to spend a lot of time learning new hardware or software. So with this in mind, we targeted campus leaders and prominent faculty. Mike already talked about his work with the provost, the president, and the college deans. And I can tell you from a repository point of view, a repository librarian point of view, those were the first people we started archiving content for. So we got their CVs, we took a look at what papers were out there, and we started loading those into the repository after doing the appropriate copyright clearance. It made the repository and the value it delivered much more real to them. My role was to approach prominent faculty, department chairs, faculty leaders. Faculty leaders ranged from folks who were very active on campus, maybe they were visible through the academic senate, or perhaps they contributed a great deal to their discipline. But I approached faculty leaders and worked with them. And we also found campus champions who could assist in promoting our project and with whom we could develop a mutually beneficial relationship. We developed a very good working relationship with the communications specialist in the College of Engineering. This person provides a newsletter as well as a college annual report summarizing faculty publications over the past quarter or the past year. And she tended to have difficulty with getting faculty to notify her of recent work. So when we presented the IR to her, she saw this as a way to assist her in gathering citations and working with faculty. And in turn, she utilized her contacts within the college to promote our project and to get faculty interested and involved. And as a result of work with the communications specialist, the advancement officer caught wind of this, and that person started promoting the annual report, which we then archived in the repository. So basically, it was driving traffic back to our site. So this was one way we worked with our target audience and defining our target audience. There are other foundational elements we're going to go into on the next slide. The foundational elements are called the marketing mix. More easily, you can remember it as the 4 Ps: product, price, placement, and promotion. And so we found it helpful to apply these marketing elements to our work with the IR. And this slide's dealing with product. The first point is know your product. Know what you're selling in terms of an IR. Are you selling a technology? Are you selling a service? When we approached marketing our IR, we saw this as a set of services which would enhance visibility and access to scholarship produced by campus. Give you an idea of what our service actually is. We talk to faculty. We will, if they provide citations, we will locate copies of their work based on those citations. If they give us hard copies, we'll digitize them for them. We'll clear copyright on their behalf. We'll upload and, of course, make the item public. We also create a profile page. Because we have the Selected Works software, we create profile pages for each faculty member. We populate it with their photograph, contact information, and, of course, the content that they've contributed to the repository. And as a result of them participating in this, they also receive automatic monthly statistical reports. It's delivered straight to their email inbox, and it tells them about how their work is being used, how often it's being used. So that's how we sell it. You also need to think about, when you're talking about your product, consider how the IR is uniquely positioned. Think about the unique features or advantages your IR can offer to your target audience, whether it's faculty or upper administration. And the key aspects or the benefits will be different with different groups. So they may resonate, visibility of a particular department may resonate with a chair. Visibility of someone's specific piece of work would resonate with an individual faculty member. It's going to depend on the individual or your target audience, but you're going to have to think about that as well. What it all boils down to basically is thinking about the pain points, thinking about the advantages your IR can deliver, and answering the question, what can the IR do for me? I found that most times when I was talking to faculty or groups, that was in the back of all their minds. What's this IR going to do for me? You have to be sure that your presentation, when you're talking to them, you can really answer that question. On the next slide, we're going to be talking about price, which is the second of the 4 Ps. Price. You need to think about what the cost is to contribute to the IR. Now obviously in the their work, and we do the rest. And we found really great success with that. We've also ensured that we provide high return on investment. So from the little time that the faculty invests in terms of giving us their CV or giving us citations, they receive those automatic email notifications telling them of the increased usage of their work. Those email notifications are a blessing, and it actually, as a result, faculty have sent us additional copies of new work, sent us new citations, and they've also recommended the service to other faculty and colleagues. So providing high return on investment is also important. On the next slide, we're going to talk about placement. Placement. How do people find your product? So in terms of an IR, the obvious answer is that they find you online. But if you think more strategically, you'll want to place links to your site from high visibility, high traffic related sites where your your target audience will see the link. For our IR, we ensured that we had links on high visibility campus web pages, such as the campus portal page, the library website, as well as partners that we'd been working with, such as public affairs and various conferences that we had been digitally archiving work for. It drove traffic to our site. We've also set our sites, one of our goals is to be linked from the main university web page as well. The second point I have is Google and Google Scholar, being sure that your IR is being indexed by the search engines. There are ways to increase the crawler friendliness of your site. Google does have specific information on how you can do that, but as you can see from the graphic on the screen, the majority of the traffic that comes to our site come from the search engines. So it's very important that, that our site is found through search engines. And of course, we've been found through direct traffic, basically folks entering in the exact URL to a repository, followed by the referral sites. So basically folks from those high visibility campus web pages that are linking back to us. The final point is, from a digital librarian point of view, you certainly want to increase access points by using other resources out there, like digital library directories, one of which is ROR, the Registry of Open Access Repositories. You can, for free, register your repository with this union list. There are also OAI federated search engines out there. OAI stands for Open Archives Initiative, and basically it's a way for these services to easily harvest your metadata and return results. And a few I'd like to mention that we use Oyster, which is actually spelled O-A-I-S-T-E-R. This is a project developed through University of Michigan and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. It indexes a variety of digital resources. We use Scientific Commons, which indexes repositories containing primarily scientific information. You basically register your URL and it indexes your site. And then if you have graduate work, you certainly want to think about registering your site with the Networked Digital Library of Theses and Dissertations, or NDLTD. There are many other subject-specific services that you can register with. If you just do a quick Google search for Open Archives Initiative, you'll certainly find those. And on the next slide, we'll see my final point about promotion. So promotion is the final piece of the marketing puzzle. Basically, promotion meaning how do you get the word out about your IR? I have a message in a bottle picture, and unlike that marooned individual who can only get their message out by putting it in a bottle and throwing it out to sea, we've found great success by using a variety of methods. We use in-person meetings. Mike talked about his presentations to the Dean's Council, various college councils I've presented to, departments, faculty, other campus groups. Email, we use email of course, as well as campus announcements. And then, I was basically placed on in certain groups, high visibility groups like you know, the research committee, other campus groups. It allowed for me to have opportunities to have hallway discussions with key faculty, with key folks on campus about the IR. Very informal way of networking. And of course, I utilized library colleagues who are embedded in campus communities who would talk about the IR and then share leads with me. You know, Professor Smith is very interested, and I would have then follow up with that person directly. An important thing to consider is medium is the message. This is a phrase coined by communications theorist Marshall McLuhan, and what he basically means is the way you get your message out plays a role in how the message is received. So we took this into account. We tailored our message according to the delivery method. So for instance, in-person meetings were very effective in developing key relationships. But we were sure to leave brochures as well as customized leave-behinds, you know, mini optical mice, customized post-its. These would be used for later reference and would be used also to keep the IR in the minds of potential contributors. So I certainly utilized email, but I was sure to personalize it if it was a cold call. So, you know, I'd send an email to a person, hey, have you heard about the IR? I would include specific information on what we were and what we could do for the faculty member or for the campus group. And then campus announcements we used, but we certainly wanted to be sure that they were kept brief and to the point. And of course, we had supporting documentation that folks could refer to and link to. The second point I want to make is, you know, you want to consider the timing of the message. We found that folks weren't receptive to our marketing, you know, at the beginning or end of quarter, around holidays, or when folks are just really busy. But they were more receptive when they were in the process of or had recently published, or when they had just received a grant. In terms of recently being published, that might be a hard thing to anticipate, but we've utilized databases on campus, including ISI, if you're familiar with ISI World of Science. We set up alerts and notifications that would notify us when Cal Poly authors were recently listed, when they had new publications available, and then we'd follow up with them directly. And then the other thing is new faculty. We certainly targeted faculty as soon as they got onto campus by including information in the new faculty packet. So that's something else in terms of timing that we certainly considered. It's really important that you try to create a buzz around your project. It's a very elusive but effective means if you have it going for you. We were able to do this by ensuring that folks had heard about our project in a variety of ways. You know, I know that there are a variety of phases that a person goes through when they're thinking about, you know, deciding on a purchase. So the fact that they've heard our message once, twice, thrice really isn't an issue. You want to be sure that they hear it in a variety of ways. And you want to be sure that you're associated with high visibility campus efforts. We certainly made sure that we were there to help out key efforts on campus, because our very involvement with those efforts was basically an endorsement of our project. A few other points on the next slide I'd like to make about the promotion piece. When you're talking to campus contributors, faculty, you want to be sure that you speak their language. I've found that if I use words like repository or submit, immediately their eyes glaze over. You want to be sure that you use language such as archive. You want to archive your work, you know, contribute to the digital archive. You certainly want to make it user-friendly, something that they can associate with. The other point we'd like to make is, Mike mentioned earlier that there are many other campus initiatives like the e-portfolios that we could be confused with. And so to combat that, we actually utilized an analogy to clear confusion. So with an e-portfolio, our analogy kind of went like this. You know, like a studio, an e-portfolio is a space intended for a student to develop their work and show their progress over time, while a digital archive, like a museum, is intended for the polished final product. And we found that that analogy really did illustrate and make clear in their minds what we were doing versus other campus initiatives. On the next slide, I'll be talking about how you present to folks. You want to be sure that when you do your presentations, you want to keep them live. Folks often have asked for my PowerPoint slides and asked about my demos. I keep my demos live. It keeps it fresh, it keeps it real, and it makes it concrete. When I show them the live site, oftentimes they say, well, how does that link? Where does that link go? Or if I click here, what happens? And I'm able to actually address those concerns, address those questions immediately as they occur. Whereas with canned slides, it would be a little more difficult. It's also helpful if you can speak from your own experience by personally utilizing the repository, contributing your work and your publications, creating a profile page if that's an option in your repository. Because then you can really speak from your own experience. You can say, you know, I'm not just a librarian, take a look at my work. I'm a client too. Oftentimes I've found in demos I can pick on myself. I can show them my profile. I can show them, you know, how the actual tools work without actually having to pick on someone else. And I've also been able to share testimonials and success stories. If there are faculty out there that are that have received invitations to speak at an engagement as a result of making their work available on the repository, or have received some additional accolade or acknowledgement, be sure that you share those stories with campus and with folks that you're meeting with, because that really speaks volumes about the value that you're delivering. And speaking of value, you certainly want to demonstrate the value you're delivering to campus in very specific and measurable terms. We've done so in two different ways. First, we created an annual report to the provost. We know that he's a numbers guy and he doesn't have a lot of time to read lengthy reports. So we focused our time on providing an executive summary of our accomplishments, visually emphasizing certain points with graphs, like the one below that shows the growth over time. This has been really effective. It gets the point across very quickly. And we have the annual report archived in our repository. We have a link at the end. So if you want to take a look at the full report and see the details, you're certainly welcome to do so. The other piece is monthly statistical reports that I mentioned. These reports that are automatically delivered to faculty have been very effective in showing how the IR has been delivering value to individual faculty members who we work with. Knowing that how often their work is being used has been really, really valuable to them. Okay, some final thoughts on the next slide. Like Mike mentioned, he focused his efforts very early on and very towards the top of the university, top management in the university, while I used my time to target chairs, committees, and individual faculty. So really, Mike did the top-down approach and I did the bottom-up, trying to get folks in between. We always looked for opportunities to be visible on campus, participating in various projects, committees, etc., and approaching those folks and seeing how we could help them. We found it useful to develop an elevator pitch. I would highly recommend this. Develop an elevator pitch that you share with library staff, share with folks who are doing the outreach for your project. If you're not familiar with the term elevator pitch, it's a short 2-minute verbal summary of what the IR is and what it can do for the individual or do for campus. And it's called an elevator pitch because it's a sales pitch that takes no more time than the duration of an elevator ride. Don't sell a technology. Be sure to sell the value that an IR can deliver to the institution, whether it's increasing the visibility of faculty and student work or increasing the visibility of the institution as a whole. You want to be sure that you emphasize those things. And when you're looking to populate your repository, you want to be sure you value what is valued by the campus. When you talk to these non-traditional library partners, they certainly do have a lot of content that they'd like to archive. Non-traditional library partners for us were public affairs, the communications specialist I mentioned, other folks on campus who we normally wouldn't work with throughout the course of normal library operation, but with the IR we were able to reach out to them, archive whatever content they found to be very important. We were able to deliver value in that way. I think on the next slide we have a list of resources. You can certainly, I welcome you to visit the Digital Commons at Cal Poly, which is our repository. We have a link to the annual report to the provost. This annual report is also listed on the ALCTS IR resources page, so you certainly can feel free to visit their resources page and download the paper from there as well. And we certainly thank you for your time. We appreciate your attendance. And Mike, I don't know if you have any final comments, but we can certainly open the floor.
Well, I think we should try to respond to some questions. So here's one that came in. Do you have a plan for future expansion of the IR or next areas to concentrate on? Marisa, you want to do that one?
Sure. Sure. This is a great question. We first started out by marketing our repository to faculty, and soon after, the Office of Research and Graduate Programs caught wind of this, and they said, you know what, we really want to do electronic theses, and we were certainly happy to do that. So we worked with them, and we implemented electronic theses in fall of 2008. And once the theses were implemented, department chairs and other campus folks said, you know what, senior projects, we'd really love to get senior projects in. We're largely an undergraduate institution, and every student to get their degree must complete a senior project. Historically, the library has served as an archive for those senior projects, but they've been in paper format. We've received them in paper format. So this summer, moving into the fall, we'll be implementing electronic senior projects. And of course, we have a lot of other institutional partners here on campus that we'll be working with as well.
Here's another question that came in. Have you developed any ways to measure the value of the quality of the IR and how valuable it is to the institution, but not in a quantitative way?
So basically, how do we deliver value to campus, or how do we provide? How do we
measure value?
How do we measure value? Well, I can tell you that if we can't do it in a quantitative way, because I think that's what the question is, how do you do it other ways? I think the fact that you can share these testimonials, gathering testimonials, gathering these success stories from faculty and others are ways to really show value, show how you deliver value to campus. So, you know, this communication specialist, perhaps we increased her productivity. You know, maybe we made her life easier. Maybe she has more accurate or up-to-date citations. That would be one way. But like I said, you know, if a faculty member is invited to conduct an orchestra in Spain as a result of making his paper available on music, those are the types of stories I think that you can also tell the campus about and deliver value.
Yeah, let me try to add something to that. I think that it's hard to measure things that aren't quantitative, but by recasting the IR as essentially a new version of a university archive, and by sharing broadly what typically has been more difficult to get access to, we're helping to build community. And that certainly on our campus should not be underrated. The fact that units like Public Affairs now puts all of their press releases into the IR, they just see it as a campus resource. Facilities planning, people who are professional but are not faculty, they see it as a great way to raise their profile and share their successes with the campus. So there's any number of different stories you can create. Now let's go back for a second. There's a couple of other questions that I think we can share with you. How many items do you load, and how many faculty deposit their own materials? Marisa?
Sure. How many items do you load? Well, we actually do the work for the faculty, so we actually load the items on behalf of the faculty. So I think that probably answers how many items do you load. How many faculty deposit their own materials? We've actually been surprised. We thought faculty would want to load their own content, but I think it boils down to time. They'd like to, but they just don't have time. So the fact that items have been made available on their behalf, they certainly do appreciate.
Here's another question. How do you convince faculty who don't want to share their content in an IR to contribute? And I think, Marisa, you've got some good information on this, but certainly the automatic statistics that come out all the time are terrific. And as one colleague shares with others, or we ourselves who are contributors to the IR can show what this is like, they're typically very impressed because faculty go to all this time and effort to write and to research. They want to get the word out. Marisa, what would you add to that?
I would agree with you. Good word of mouth is certainly effective. We were able to basically conquer a department by having one really outgoing champion. He was kind of an early adopter of the service, and he was really impressed by what we provided to him. And then he really told all his colleagues in the department, hey, you really should work with Marisa. You really should work with this project. And so, you know, maybe good word of mouth. I would say that you can't really convince someone who doesn't want to be convinced. So if they don't want to work with you, in our case, we get the message out. We say, hey, we'd love to work with you. If you're not interested right now, no problem. We'll come back to you. And that's where you know, the message in a bottle, you can't just send out one message. You have to be sure that you come back to them and kind of get to them in several different ways. I think that's
Here's another
important.
one. Oops, sorry. Can you give us an example of what you mean by being part of high visibility campus efforts? And I think what we were referring to there is if the campus is sponsoring a special symposium, a special institute, we try and get the papers for that and make it part of the resources available in IR. So, and an example of this was last summer. There was a fairly large sustainability conference on campus that involved not only all 23 campuses of the CSU system, but also the 10 or 11 in the UC system. And so the papers from that are now on our institutional repository representing the event. Let me see the next question here. Do you allow campus faculty staff to add their own materials to the IR, or are only library staff allowed?
I think we have a hybrid approach. Like I mentioned before, faculty really haven't asked to upload their own material. If they were to ask, we would certainly allow them to do that. But again, it boils down to time. We have several campus partners. Mike mentioned public affairs. We work with one of the other departments as well, music. Those two departments are interested in making images available, and they wanted to control you know, the restriction and if they could make certain images visible and not visible. And so because it was so specific to their work and their requirements, we, you know, turned the wheel over to them in terms of uploading. But it's kind of a hybrid approach. It depends on what the campus entity or the campus group wishes to have, and we certainly provide training if they want to upload on their own.
Here's an important question. What have you done to make your repository accessible for people with disabilities? What formats are the deposits, PDF, others? So the bpress software, just like DSpace, I think, is capable of accepting almost any file format, but that doesn't necessarily make it accessible. Probably the dominant format we're accepting is PDF, and it is very easy to make PDF documents accessible. It's built right into the Adobe software. Anything to add on that, Marisa?
I would agree with you, Mike. Most of the content we make available in our repository are PDFs, and we definitely ensure that the PDFs are ADA compliant. That's something from the get-go we saw as being important. In terms of images that I previously mentioned, we certainly talk to our campus groups. We talk to them about the importance of metadata and how that metadata can supplement a visual item for folks with visual disabilities.
Another one, how do you handle copyright issues for adding faculty content to your IR?
Great question. That that's something that we've spent, I think, the majority of our time on. There are several resources out there in terms of finding out the copyright policies, but typically what happens is, we receive a few citations from a faculty member. We try to go out, locate who the publisher is. We use, if you're familiar with the database Sherpa Romeo, I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with it, take a look in Google. You can type it out, Sherpa Romeo. This is a database of publisher policies, copyright policies. We take a look in Sherpa, we see what the publisher policy is, and sometimes the publisher policy isn't available. And in that case, we contact the publisher directly, asking them for permission to make the content available within our repository. The information on Sherpa is very helpful. It will tell you what you can and cannot upload. What types of attribution do you need to provide to the publisher? Maybe you need to provide a link back to the publisher. Provides a whole host of information. But that basically kind of gives you a full view of what we do in terms of copyright clearance. And I'm certainly happy to talk to you offline. There's a lot more that goes into it, but certainly be willing to talk to you offline about our process as well.
Next one is, do you only load citations from CVs for which you can get the full text? We found that for much of our content, the publishers don't allow their version, the publisher PDF, to be loaded into an IR, and faculty don't have or don't want to load their postprint.
Yes, so if we cannot find the full text, we are not able to obviously upload the item. We wanted to be sure that our IR was a repository that had full text. We didn't want to be a citation database. And because we have this profile software, we're able to load the full CV of a faculty member onto the profile page. So if a person wants the full list of citations, they can certainly download the CV. But when we can't get permission to upload a full text or the appropriate version of a full text, we certainly are careful to remain within the boundaries of the copyright and the publisher wishes.
Next question is, how many FTE do you have working on the project, and what level are these staff? So basically, we've got one library faculty member, and that's Marisa, and we have one full-time staff member also working on it. Although that staff person also shares her time on the public desk in special collections, does she not, Marisa?
Yes, that's correct.
Do we have students working on it?
We do. We have several students who work on running these ADA compliance processes. We train them on digitization as well, and they do some basic uploading procedures. We do all the copyright clearance. We certainly want to be sure that we have continuity and we have control over that process. So we have students do digitization, some of these ADA processes and uploading.
Here's another one. How do you deal with articles by multiple faculty? Do you obtain permission from each author or just the one from your institution?
Well, it depends on if they've signed over the copyright to a publisher. A lot of times, maybe faculty have 2 or 3 co-authors, but as a result of publishing, they've signed over the copyright to the publisher. So the publisher is the entity that we deal with. We have encountered a few situations where there are multiple co-authors and they own copyright. So in that case, we certainly are sure to contact all the co-authors. Sometimes it takes a little longer than we'd like, but we do ensure that all the folks are notified.
Okay, this is an interesting question. Building community and enhancing communication is ideal, but electronic media is inherently unstable and perpetually expensive to maintain. What sort of genuine preservation steps have we implemented for long-term stability?
I think this is a question that we're all grappling with if you're in the digital field. Preservation is an issue that we're all learning about, and I think it's important that you keep preservation in the front of your mind as soon as you start a repository. In that respect, we've certainly been sure to, when we create our PDFs, they're PDFA, so they're an open format. We also ensure that we have multiple backups, not just on campus but off-site. And you know, we try to stay abreast of all the preservation issues and advancements that are out there. But I think this is something that everyone's grappling with, and you just try to do your best in terms of staying abreast of all the developments, making sure that you can migrate and make your content available as these new changes occur.
Going back to an earlier thread, can you estimate how much time it takes to tag your PDFs, and who does this?
How much time to tag our PDFs? I'm assuming the question is dealing with ADA compliance. Within Adobe, there is a tagging functionality that once you run OCR, optical character recognition, you can then run a tagging functionality, and it tags your document. We have a student who tags it and then goes back and double checks and makes sure that the tags basically, I guess to back up, tags basically tell a screen reader what they're reading as a header, what they're reading as a body paragraph, what they're reading is an image. So what we do is we run an automated tagging piece of software, which is available within the PDF software. We run tagging, and then we have someone go back and double check and make sure that the tagging is correct and correct the mistakes that might have occurred. I would say in terms of time, you know, we have students run all these different processes, the ADA compliance, gosh, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. I'm just throwing a number out there, though. We have students working on this. We have about 20 hours of student time a week.
And I suspect this is going to be our last question. It goes back to the staffing issue. How many hours a week do people work on the IR? I think that's going to be an estimate, isn't it? I mean, both of the two full-time staff people I mentioned earlier are fully designated to this project, but like anything else, they are used in other ways. The staff person does work part of the time at the public service desk. Marisa is spreading her time over various committees and other faculty responsibilities, but her main job is the IR. If you could do a fast guess as in the real world, what's the percentage of your time you really get to devote to IR, including the marketing piece, what would it be?
I would say, gosh, 80%. 80% of my time, if we're not, you know, it's basically what I live and breathe once I'm on campus. And, you know, the committee work does take time, but I actually use it as an opportunity, like I said, for these informal hallway discussions. So, I don't know, 80%? I don't know, I'm just making a number up here. I
would think that's probably pretty good.
Yeah, for our repository assistant, the person who's working the public desk, I believe formally her job is also 80% on the repository, and then 20% on the desk in terms of public reference.
So I think that has taken us to the end of the questions. And we thank you all very much for joining us today. Both of us are available to answer additional questions if you would like to use our email addresses there on the screen. Marisa, goodbye to you.
Goodbye to you, Mike, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you all once again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Marisa and Mike, thank you very much for an excellent and thorough discussion on strategies for marketing the repository. Your presentation was full of practical advice for establishing a dialogue within the organization about the benefits of an institutional repository. The subject of institutional repositories continues to generate great interest. In response to inquiries from webinar participants, ALCTS created a small but continually expanding list of resources on IR, which may be accessed from the ALCTS homepage under IR Resources, and the URL for that link is on the screen. Today's presentation concludes the spring series of ALCTS webinars on institutional repositories. Over the course of the summer, we will be arranging for a fall-winter series on this topic, and we already have a number of items lined up. The evaluation form for today's session will reach you shortly. Please take a moment to respond to the survey. Not only is your assessment of today's session very important for us, but also one of the questions on the survey includes a list of future topics. Please help us to prioritize them and include suggestions on other aspects of institutional repositories you would like to see addressed. Now, on behalf of Cindy Hepfer and myself, I would like to thank Carrie Cassio and Jordan Fields for their technical and administrative support for today's webinar. And again, thank you to Mike and Marisa for presenting this interesting session. And thank you to all of our attendees for their attention, and we hope you will join us again for more webinars on this and other topics later this year.